rain was relentless that night, pounding against the cracked windows of the cafe like an orchestra of forgotten memories. The streets outside glistened with reflections of neon lights, and the air smelled of coffee, wet asphalt, and something bittersweet. Perhaps the scent of things that could have been. Inside, she sat alone at the far corner, her hands wrapped around a cup that had long gone cold. She was 42, though her eyes carried the weight of someone who had seen too many winters and survived too many heartbreaks. When he walked in, 29, with a quiet confidence that came from somewhere between youth and purpose, her life unknowingly changed forever. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of love that defies time, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Single Sun Stories, where hearts find their home in words. Her name was Elara, a literature teacher who had spent years buried in poems and novels, using fiction to escape the monotony of her quiet life. She wasn't unhappy, but she wasn't alive either. After her husband left her for someone younger, a predictable tragedy of midlife, she built walls so high even sunlight couldn't reach her heart anymore. She came to that cafe every Friday evening, pretending to read, secretly watching strangers, finding stories in their faces. That's when she first noticed him, a young man with a notebook sketching people instead of talking to them. There was something gentle in the way he observed the world, as if he saw beauty where others saw noise. Weeks passed, and their silent routine continued. He would draw, she would read. They never spoke, but one evening he approached her table asking if he could sketch her. She hesitated, then smiled politely, unsure why her heart beat so strangely fast. He sketched her in silence, and when he showed it to her, she was stunned. It wasn't her reflection, it was her essence. The sadness in her eyes, the strength in her jawline, the quiet loneliness in her posture. It was all there. He had seen her, truly seen her, in ways no one had for years. His name was Arlen. He was an artist who worked part-time at a local gallery and spent the rest of his time capturing moments that would otherwise vanish. They began to talk after that night, first about art and books, then about life and the scars it leaves behind. Arlen was open, honest, and painfully genuine, the kind of soul who didn't just listen. He understood. He would tell her about his mother, who had died young, about how that loss taught him to see the world not by its years but by its moments. And she told him about her divorce, about how love once felt like home, until it became a wound she learned to live with. Days turned into weeks, and conversations turned into companionship. The world around them blurred. Time seemed to bend when they spoke. Yet there was a quiet tension inside Elara's heart, an unspoken fear that what she felt wasn't allowed. Society had rules, and love wasn't supposed to cross certain numbers. She tried to distance herself, but every time she did, she found herself drawn back to him. His laughter, his sincerity, his way of making even silence feel warm. It was all too much and not enough at once. One evening, as the sun sank behind the rain-drenched window, she whispered almost to herself, "You know I'm older than you, right?" Her tone carried a mix of guilt and self-defense, as if she was already apologizing for something she hadn't done. Arlen looked at her with that calm smile that had always disarmed her. "My heart doesn't count years," he said softly, his eyes steady on hers. "It only knows how it feels when you walk into the room." Those words broke something inside her, maybe a wall, maybe a chain. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to feel without calculating consequences. Still, love wasn't easy. It came with whispers, stares, and judgments. Her friends questioned her choices. Her colleagues gossiped, and even her reflection sometimes asked her if she was being foolish. But Arlen's presence made everything bearable. He never asked her to hide. He never made her feel old. He made her feel alive. Their love grew quietly, like ivy creeping through the cracks of an abandoned building, reclaiming what time had tried to take. They traveled together. Small towns, forgotten museums, art fairs where no one cared about age. She watched him paint her under golden sunsets, and he watched her read under the soft glow of lamplight. Every shared moment became proof that love doesn't need permission to exist. Yet, like all beautiful things, their story wasn't without storms. One winter evening, Arlen received an offer, an art scholarship in Italy. A once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Elara's heart ached when he told her, but she smiled anyway. "You have to go," she said, even though every part of her wanted him to stay. He promised he'd come back, that their story wasn't ending, just pausing. For months after he left, she wrote to him daily. Letters filled with longing, poetry, and little sketches she'd learned to draw just to feel closer to him. His letters came back just as full, dreams, promises, and paintings of her face now framed in foreign landscapes. But then, silence. No letters for weeks. She tried to convince herself it was the distance, the workload, the time zones, until the day a call came, a car accident, they said. He had survived but lost partial use of his right hand, the hand he painted with. Her heart shattered, but she didn't cry. She simply packed her bags and flew across the ocean. When she found him sitting by a window overlooking Florence, his eyes were dim, his spirit almost gone. He told her he couldn't paint anymore, that his dreams had ended. But she knelt beside him, took his trembling hand, and said, "Dreams don't end, Arlen, they just change their shape." She stayed by his side for months, helping him heal, helping him see that art wasn't just in his hands, it was in his eyes, his words, his love. Slowly he began to draw again, teaching himself to paint left-handed. The lines were rough at first, but there was something deeper in them, a vulnerability that perfection could never capture. Together they opened a small studio in Florence, one that celebrated imperfection, time, and the beauty of unfinished things. Their love became their art, a masterpiece painted not with youth or perfection, but with faith, pain, and tenderness. Years later, when people walked into their studio, they saw more than art. They saw life stitched together by courage and compassion. Elara's hair had turned silver by then, and Arlen's hand still trembled when he painted, but his smile never did. When young couples asked them how they made it work, Elara would smile and say, "Love doesn't follow calendars, it just follows truth." If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that love is not about age but about connection, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Single Sun Stories, where every story reminds us that it's never too late to begin again. Before you go, leave a comment below and tell us, do you believe love can exist beyond time, beyond judgment, beyond age? Your words might inspire someone who needs to hear them today.